Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform for thought leaders to share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in real world. Today's topic is resiliency rules. Our special guest today is Jay Upchurch, CIO at SAS. Hi, Jay. Welcome to CXO Spice.
Hi, Alan. Grateful to be here with you today.
Well, congratulations on winning 2022 Carolina Global CIO of the Year Award and Stevie Award bronze recognition in the Technology Executive of the Year category recently. So I'm curious, tell us more why you joined SAS and your vision as a CIO at SAS.
All right, so let's start with maybe SAS a little bit. For those of you who don't know SAS, SAS could be the best kept secret, if you will, in the industry. SAS was founded in 1976 here in North Carolina, where I'm based, right down the street at NC State University by Dr. Goodnight and Dr. Saul. And it was originally founded as a statistical analysis system language to help with agricultural data, so insights into agricultural data, to make the agricultural industry more productive and higher quality. Fast forward 47 years to where we are today. We are probably the world's largest privately held software company out there in the world. We serve customers across all industries and around the globe in helping them find data insights in the moments that matter. So we have about $3 billion a year in annual revenue. So we find ourselves as kind of the founders and the futures of the AI and analytics market. Interesting story that got me here. I was actually an intern at SAS back in the late 90s when I was in school right down the street at UNC Chapel Hill. And then I found my way back here about 4.5 years ago as the CIO at SAS. I love being at SAS. There's a lot of things that align and speak to me, especially around values. Again, that SAS kind of corporate values. We value curiosity, accountability, authenticity, and passion. That speaks a lot to me personally, part of the reason why I'm here. I love the idea that we are helping our customers with driving their business forward with data and insights and analytics. And then I also love our passion as a company around using data for good. So we do a lot in the world just around thinking about how we use data for humanity. My vision, that's a good question. So there's two parts to my job. I should explain that. I have a CIO plus role. So I have traditional global IT responsibilities a CIO would, but I also oversee our commercial business for SAS Cloud. So anywhere we choose to distribute our innovation in the cloud for our customers. So I think on the enterprise technology side of the house, right, I need to power the enterprise. I need to make sure that we've removed all barriers or obstacles so they can, again, harness their curiosity for driving the innovation of the company. And then I think on the customer side, it's very similar. We want to remove all barriers for adoption and operations of SaaS technology for our customers so they can focus in on fueling their curiosity and driving and letting the data tell its story.
So your corporate value really speaks to me, right? Talk about curiosity, accountability. Using data for good is just that alone can have another episode of CXO Spice. So I'm so honored to have you here with us. By the way, SAS conducted a study called Resiliency Rules that inspired today's conversation. The study actually reveals some interesting insights about the state of resilience in organizations. What motivated SAS to conduct the study? Could you talk a little bit more about what are the key findings from the study?
Sure. So let's talk about the study, maybe just give everybody a little bit of guidance around. So we were fascinated by the world around us. The rate of change is at unprecedented levels in my lifetime, especially starting with COVID, right, rolling through geopolitical issues, social issues, climate issues, financial issues. And so with all of this change around us, we started asking ourselves, what makes a company successful? Not necessarily just surviving through all that uncertainty, but really thriving as we head through it. And so this concept of resiliency started popping up over and over again. And so we wanted to find out what makes a company resilient. And that's really what kind of kicked off this a little bit of research. So we started asking, and we asked 2,400 global senior executives from companies with over 100 employees, so larger companies, a chance to say, well, are you resilient? What makes you resilient? And just a guiding dialogue, if you will, to kind of dig into that ambiguous topic of resiliency. We really had kind of three key findings, if you will, that I would tell you to walk away with. Number one, 97% of those surveyed said that resiliency is a critical business initiative for them today. So I think they all recognize the uncertainty around the world around them, and their obligation as senior executives to make sure that they protect, again, and drive, the company as you go forward. But interesting enough, only 47% of those surveys said, yeah, we're actually resilient. So there's this massive gap between desire and reality, right? And as it relates to this concept of resiliency. And that's what we've coined the phrase of being a resiliency gap. And then the last takeaway I'd say is that there were 81% of those surveyed said, yeah, we need help. We don't know really where to start. We love this idea. We know it's a business imperative, but man, we need a lot of help to get you there. So it was kind of a call to action, if you will. It was an eye-opening experience for us to have a chance to talk to all those senior executives.
Well, I'm surprised it's not 100% executive believe resiliency is important, right? That being said, the finding is very consistent with my observation, because I work with many companies and then CIOs, C-suite executives, they're challenged with where to start. I actually came across with the resiliency assessment tool developed by SAS that enables leaders to appraise their own company's resiliency quotient. Can you tell us more about how this tool works and what insights it can provide?
Yeah, the resiliency assessment tool was a really fascinating byproduct of the survey and the results. We didn't start off with this idea, hey, we're going to build this tool that everybody can use. But as we found ourselves having the conversations with more and more respondents, it was interesting because we created an index, first of all, for those to benchmark themselves against. And then this assessment tool allowed you to map your own perceptions of your, assessment, if you will, of your resilience against a number of different criteria, and then kind of, if you will, align you back to that index. So it's a great tool. It's available to anybody. You can go out there and take it and then assess your own. One thing that was fascinating about it was in this index, what it found was really only about 26% of organizations were already, I'll say, highly resilient. 54% were moderate and 20 were low. So set that first as your expectation. Remember, not everybody out there is at 100% resiliency. So again, don't be shy about taking the assessment.
Well, I actually test that myself. I loved about that there are 16 questions, right? Some of the questions maybe we don't even remember to ask ourselves. So that really walks us through. The second part I love about it is allow us to compare to the industry, right? There's a benchmark there. So thank you, kudos to SAS. By the way, in order for us to dive into this discussion, we first should define resiliency. How does SAS define resiliency, and why it's so important for companies to invest in building resiliency?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I think from a definition standpoint, we think about resiliency as an organization's ability to prepare for and react to changes in the market conditions or other disruption in the world around you. Why is that so important? As I said at the beginning, right? I mean, the rate of change around us is at an unprecedented pace. I can remember in my early days of career, people hiring, they always want to know, hey, is this person adaptable? Will they adapt to change? They're willing to help drive it. Then we went into this phase of, well, IT needs to drive disruption inside of companies. And so we were disruptive, positive, constructive disruption, if you will. And now we're in this world where the norm is change all around us, and we have to prepare and react to it. It's not really a question anymore of can you adapt to it, but now it's business imperative to do that. So I think it's more important than ever that a company, not just the individual, but at a company level, you're able to pivot to those changes that are around you. The other thing that's interesting and why I think this is so important in today's age is more than 90% of our executive surveyed all said that they turn to data in the face of disruption. And so this idea of resiliency is tied really to data as well. And we'll get into that in a minute. But that's definitely part of where I think our curiosity naturally led us to this idea of why resiliency is so important today.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Jay. I mean, resiliency to me is not just about bouncing back. It's about growing stronger and thriving in the face of challenges. So the resiliency rules report highlights 5 key principles that are instrumental to maintaining and strengthening business resiliency. Can you explain these principles and how do they contribute to companies' overall resiliency?
Yeah, so you're right. There were 5 rules that kind of, if you will, bubbled up to the top in our survey and talking to different senior executives. I'll walk you through each one. So first of all, it's speed and agility. And this is a little self-explanatory, but it's really your ability as an organization to pivot quickly. Not everybody's willing to do that. I think in the history of business, there's plenty of examples of companies that were unable to react fast enough, missed an opportunity, or worse, maybe even ignored the circumstances around you for whatever reason. I think those brands that have long passed now, I think all suffered, if you will, from this ability to act with some agility, and again against the market conditions that are around.
Some disappeared already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Second one is innovation. I think this one's also self-explanatory at some level. The ability to innovate. We saw it in COVID period, right? Different companies that not only were able to stay connected, but actually thrive through their ability to innovate and provide new services, new solutions, obviously digitally enabled in many ways, but that ability to innovate quickly. And primarily through the survey, what we found too is that innovation is always data-led with insights. So really pushing data in a way that drives innovation within your company and for the solutions that you provide those around you. Third rule on the list was around equity and responsibility. So this was really interesting because it came up to this idea of social awareness, which is obviously all around us, and the ability and responsibility that companies have to innovate, not only so through design, through operations, obviously through employment development, but with an eye on responsibility. So being aware of the data that's used, making sure that you're not doing anything with any unintentional bias, and creating and continuing to create that trust. We know that brands can, it takes decades to build up a brand, but you can lose that brand trust in a moment if you're not careful. And so what we think a lot about is just the ability to innovate, but obviously ensuring ethical responsibilities.
Yeah, so it's not just about top line, bottom line, it's about green line as well. Right? It's crucial for long-term resilience.
Very, very well said. And that's top of mind. And it came out loud and clear in the survey. Fourth one that I touch on is data culture and literacy. Obviously, this speaks to us at SAS a lot in terms of where we're going, but this is all about a company's ability to be data driven. And so I think a lot about it is having a data first mindset. Every time you're asked a question, every time you're facing adversity, and we all seek out answers, so we try to avoid the subjectivity of a gut feeling. And data gives us clarity. It gives us confidence when we choose to use it. And what we found in the survey was that companies that were more resilient or highly resilient already had I'll say a data first mindset. It was fascinating to see the maturity that they had around data governance and management and other aspects. And then that gave them the foundation, right, to be able to pivot quickly. So it actually fed a lot of the other ones, the other rules, but obviously foundational as well.
Yeah, I echo what you just said, but turning that data into actionable insights is really the magic, right? And that's a lot of companies struggle today.
We see that a lot with our customers. There's kind of what we call the AI or analytics life cycle. And a lot of companies are focused on data from a data management or access, maybe a little bit of governance if they're concerned about security and access and control. The next element in the life cycle is all around workflows and the ability to model, right, and do that at scale, because not many companies can do that. We'll talk about kind of talent and talent famine in a minute there, but companies that value their data and then want to drive insights from that data and how you model against that. And then the last step is where you were just at, and that's just around how do you put those insights into action. And for a long time, the industries have suffered there. They have a lot of science experiments. They create great models. They actually drive fantastic insights, but they can't put them into action out in production sometimes. Sometimes that's alignment of business. Sometimes a little bit of trust in the data, and then again coming back around to let's have a data first mindset in all our actions.
Yep, totally. And that's about alignment and accountability, lack of, right?
Oh, absolutely, totally right. And then I touched on the last one, the last resiliency rule that we saw, and that was just around this culture of curiosity. And we love that topic as well. Data, when you allow it, will take you on a journey, but you have to be curious. You have to continue to prompt and ask and let it again drive you to insights that were unexpected before. And we love that. It's one of our core values at our company. But from a curiosity standpoint, it's one of the things that unfortunately we lose sometimes as we get older, right? As a kid, at some point, you're almost told to stop asking questions, because it's almost annoying in some cases. As we get older, we lose sight of that, and we get very comfortable in the repetition and the routine. And what we found is that the companies that are highly resilient, they embrace and empower and in fact encourage curiosity in their company. Now, that's not to say that you're curious without the expectation of delivery, right? We still have commercial aspirations as companies, but that curiosity is really, really important, because without it, you can't plan for the unexpected. You can't embrace a data first mindset. You can't, drive innovation without being curious. So curiosity is really a very important foundation of all of the resiliency rules.
Yeah, I could not have agreed more with you, Jay. I mean, that's curiosity is a catalyst for innovation, but we have to foster that in a structured way so that we can get things done as well.
That's right, and I think many companies that we spoke with, they're almost if you're not leaning into curiosity, it's almost you're afraid of it. You're afraid that it's not a productive use of time. And what we saw in the survey results is it's actually the exact opposite. The more curious you are, the better the outcome, the better results you have for you and your customers.
Yeah, that's well said. So by the way, which of the 5 rules do you personally think is most important? Which is hardest to achieve? My favorite one is always curiosity, right? But then I love to hear about your personal preference, and then what is the hardest to achieve too? Yeah.
Well, I think the most important one is data culture and literacy. And I say that because I think data ultimately ends up being part of all of them. But I would also say that it's one of the hardest ones to achieve because, people are overwhelmed. So I think 35% of our respondents said, hey, we're overwhelmed with data. Another 54% said we struggle getting talent. We know in the industry there's a talent famine. We've been forecasting a STEM talent gap for a long time. It's even more true when it comes to data scientists. So we are, as an industry, working very hard to take the computer science out of being a data scientist. We're trying to make it easier for more people to participate in it. So I think when we think about data culture and literacy, companies struggle with it because they're just overwhelmed. They almost don't know where to start. To me, data culture and literacy, again, coming back around to that data first mindset, drives your ability to innovate. It fuels your curiosity because it gives you a tool, right, to act on your curiosity. There is an element of responsible innovation, right, that you can do with data, especially if you drive for transparency and explainability around where the data come from, how it's being used, and being able to report on that. And then, of course, when you have those things, it fuels that last resiliency rule. And that's just around speed and agility. You can't act quickly with confidence unless you have a data-driven decision and insight. So to me, I think data culture and literacy is probably the most important. Hardest to achieve. Data, that's not easy. There's a lot of people who are just overwhelmed because data is coming at us at an unprecedented pace. But then to your point, I think curiosity sometimes becomes an obstacle for companies too. They're a little nervous. Hey, I've got commercial demands. I've got shareholders that want to see a certain level of revenue. Can I afford the time for my employee base to participate in curiosity? So I think sometimes that's a tough struggle for companies, especially public companies.
Yeah, I echo what you just said, Jay. And when I was a global leader, I had 4 functions on the team where I learned that the customer success VP may not understand professional service VP's metrics, right? So really have them learn from each other, the customer support team, and what are the key metrics being measured, and what are the drivers driving toward those metrics. That literacy, once you lift that literacy, improve that literacy, it really helps the entire organization to work with each other and achieve the common goal. But that's being said, having a tool like SaaS really help. You first need that visibility, then you need to make sure you build a culture, people are all aligned to work toward that common goal. That's really critical. And obviously, challenges companies face when trying to build resiliency. And is there any customer you work with that you help them overcome these challenges?
Well, absolutely. So we've got about 17,000 customers worldwide. We have some fantastic stories across all industries. And then our solutions include both platform and a language and a platform, and then obviously industry specific solutions as well. Let me give you a couple of themes first, and then maybe we'll dive into a particular customer example. I think companies struggle both with resiliency and then at some level getting into more of a data first mindset and then ultimately an execution, primarily for 2 reasons. I think it's cost and focus, number one. So just the ability to invest and do that well at scale. And then I think number 2, it's talent, just access to talent and the ability to retain that talent. I think those are the 2 biggest challenges that companies face. When we engage our customers and when they seek out answers with us, generally it's where do I start? I'm overwhelmed with this. And again, as we said earlier, the resiliency study clearly showed that companies recognize the need to pivot into data when faced with uncertainty. And so a lot of companies are coming to us saying, hey, we need help. A great example that I walk you through is Georgia Pacific. Georgia Pacific is one of the household name, right? One of the largest paper manufacturers in the world. One of the most interesting supply chain disruptions in COVID as well. And they already had a data value, if you will. They were already collecting a tremendous amount of data, whether or not it's through manufacturing or through supply chain. And as they were being disrupted, they had a foundation to start with, but they needed a lot more. And so they came to us and asked for help us think about models, help about scaling those out, and then putting those insights into action, as you were mentioning a minute ago, Helen. And what's fascinating is we were able to work with them through data management and access, right? Make sure that we have good data hygiene, if you will. And then as soon as we turned on the power of via our platform, they had the ability to model at scale. And when I say model at scale, it was a lot of different resources. So again, helping out with talent, coming in and using the tool for data inspection, visualization, and modeling, and then using the tool in the AI that's in the tool to do champion and challengers, find the right model that works best, and then ultimately output insights that they could put into action. So this was the fascinating story. It was, imagine you're a manufacturer. So many people that are working the manufacturing floor, they've been doing it for years. They do it by gut feel, by experience. I can hear the machine. I know it's not working right. Versus the data-driven mindset that says, oh, by making this one tweak, very small adjustments, we can drive up production, drive up productivity, drive up quality. So getting the operator to trust the data was fun and exciting to see. Today, Georgia Pacific has over 15,000 models in action, not just science experiments behind the scenes with data scientists, but actually out in production, helping again through quality, through manufacturing processes, through speed and efficiency, through supply chain and distribution. And again, if you rewind your mind back a couple of years ago into COVID, you remember stories of there were no products on the shelf. Right? Yeah. Georgia Pacific thrived, right? Not only did they survive, but they thrived through that and obviously came out the other side of it, a much stronger company as a result of it. And then what's been fun is now with that experience, they're coming to us again and again and again and saying, hey, what's next? What should we go do? Where's the next place that we can apply this wonderful data-driven advantage that we have?
Well, you coined this model of scale. I love that concept, right? 15,000 models, that's quite a bit. So kudos. You talk a little bit about culture, data culture. In what way does a strong data culture help company better adapt to market changes?
Yeah. So let's talk about data culture. So data culture, like I said before, it starts with a value of having a data mindset, data first mindset, right? So that's hard to do. There are a lot of companies, there are going to be people that are listening that are going to say, hey, I've got a group of 5 people. They're in a corner somewhere in an office. They know where the data lives and they know how to analyze it. And if I ask them a business intelligence question, they give me an answer back, right? It's so much more than that. Your company has to have a data first mindset. When faced with a question, the first response has got to be, where's the data? What does it tell me? So that's got to be pervasive across all. So back to your example a minute ago of one line of business not necessarily understanding the other line of business, using data as a common vocabulary to speak to one another about and appreciate, again, how it works is really, really important today. I think number 2 is data hygiene. You've got to have really good data hygiene. And what do I mean by that? It just your data structures, your data dictionaries, your ability to access data in a timely way. The importance of having a good data structure that you can have confidence in. Closely related to that, obviously, is third, and that's around data governance. There's plenty of companies that are going to say, hey, that's great, but I'm only going to allow certain people access, or I need the controls and safeguards around everything else. So again, data first mindset, hygiene, governance. And then last, but very, very important, obviously, is the responsible use of data, right, to avoid unintended bias. And then make sure, again, that data is used for good, if you will. So I think those 4 elements kind of help out with data, creating that data, strong data culture, if you will. And then what does that bring you to your question? It removes the emotion in the moment. Mm-hmm. Right. I mentioned before the study said, hey, most of the executives turn to data. Why? Why do they turn to data? They're afraid of making a mistake. We all are afraid of making mistakes. So we have to have a point of confidence, and data gives us that. Not only does it give us an insight into it, but it allows us, once we have access to the data, again, just timely and fast because you've got good hygiene around it. But now you can model, you can war game out the scenarios. So it's not just how do I react to the moment, but how do I plan for the next? And what are all the variabilities of what that next moment could look like? And how can I model and prepare my business against it? That is where the power of data with analytics and now AI, right, really help drive and propel businesses forward.
I love that, Jay. Number 1 is having the data first mindset. Number 2, to ensure you have data hygiene. Number 3 is the data governance. And number 4, obviously, you have to use the data responsibly. I love that. Thank you. And here it comes to our last question. What practical guidance would you give to those companies who are in the early stage of developing their resiliency roadmap?
Yeah, I think first, take the assessment. Right, the tool is there; it's out there. It gives everybody a chance to kind of benchmark yourself. I think most people that are in a role of leadership, they're probably competitive by nature anyway. So kind of gamify a little bit, if you will, around, hey, how's my competitor doing, or how are those against that I may compete with? That's a good way to kind of get an idea of, well, how resilient am I? I think number 2 is you go through that, as you were saying a minute ago when you took the assessment tool. Paying attention to the questions is really interesting because suddenly it opens up your eyes to, well, what are the different elements of resiliency? I think sometimes people think about resiliency as financial resilience or operational technology resilience, and it's so much more if you're thinking about business scale and resiliency. I think number 2 is, if you take the assessment, is what we were talking about a minute ago around just having a data first mindset and building that culture. That can be challenging for some customers. And we see it in some of our engagements as well. Start small. And it's contagious. I guarantee it. How many times have you been in a meeting and the person beside you has the data? They have their numbers. They know they have the insights already, and you're flat-footed. you're waiting, you're trying to figure out, well, okay, how do I go get that? How do I get that advantage? So what we've seen in our customers is it may start in a particular division or with a particular team, and it just catches, kind of a groundswell effect, if you will. So don't be shy about starting small, because be confident it will be contagious. I think third is look for ways to drive and value curiosity in your company. Don't be scared of curiosity that may not lead to productivity, because I think all curiosity actually does in its own unique way. And if you think about businesses over the last 10 years, right, we've all talked about failing fast or failing forward. And also that is all about like using your curiosity to make advancements. So value it, push it, encourage it. And then I think last but not least, and this is more of a CIO specific one, is use resiliency as a call to action. CIOs have historically been responsible for technology resiliency, so we naturally think about high availability and failover and how to make sure that that our systems are resilient. You have a natural platform to go to your board and talk about the importance of resiliency at a company level. Talking about it, raising visibility around it, and will encourage your peers to participate with you. And I think by doing so, then you can bring forward, the 5 rules into your company in a very constructive way. And it's going to give you a strong competitive advantage every time one of these new uncertain, events occurs in the world around you.
Yeah, I echo what you just said, Jay. It's so important for the board members to really build that resiliency gap awareness, right? Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Here are my 4 key takeaways. Number 1 is the resiliency rules study underscores that many executives acknowledge a significant gap between the importance they place on resiliency and the actual resilience levels of their organizations, right? As a matter of fact, you point out there's 50% of the gap. So recognizing this gap is first step towards addressing it effectively. Second, the number 2 is data analytics play a pivotal role in implementing the resiliency rules. High resiliency organizations leverage data extensively for decision making. You mentioned about having the data first, data governance, and use the data responsibly. All those are really critical for navigating disruptions and ensuring business continuity. And then the third one is the 5 resiliency rule framework, right? SAS identified 5 key principles: the speed and agility, innovation, equity and responsibility, data culture, literacy, and curiosity as fundamental to building business resiliency. Executives or board members should prioritize and invest in these areas to enhance their organization's ability to adapt and thrive. Lastly, your practical guidance for a resiliency roadmap to close this gap and foster greater business resiliency. Companies should really focus on developing a more structured strategy that impacts key business metrics. And so building a strong data culture, leveraging data and analytics tools are central to this journey. I'd like to encourage people to try out this resiliency assessment tool. In less than 5 minutes, you can actually identify your company's resiliency quotient based on resiliency rules. So when resilience is summoned, remarkable accomplishments await. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.